Hey everybody, welcome to the Blendr Report, where news meets rational thinking. I'm your host, Jonathan Harvey. This is your co-host, Liam DeBoer. Liam, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to be chatting about the Liberal leadership race, the escalating clash between Alberta and Ottawa over oil and gas restrictions in response to Trump's tariff threats, tax disputes between NHL Stars and the CRA over signing bonuses, the devastating impact of Canada's healthcare waitlists, nearly 50,000 international students failing to attend class, and Zuckerberg's decision to end Meta's fact-checking program while easing censorship policies. So, first off, we've got recycled faces, broken policies. Canada stalls under Liberal chaos. Justin Trudeau's resignation has thrown the Liberal Party into chaos, with the leadership race shaping up as a contest of establishment elites and familiar faces, offering little new vision. Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives maintain a commanding lead in the polls, framing the race as a choice between more of the same failed policies. Mark Carney, backed by over 30 MPs, is the frontrunner, with his economic expertise touted as a counter to Poilievre. However, Carney's policies, carbon taxes, overregulation, and insider-driven climate initiatives mirror Trudeau's unpopular legacy. Meanwhile, Chrystia Freeland faces scrutiny for her economic failures and authoritarian handling of the Freedom Convoy protests. Other contenders, including Melanie Joly and Dominic LeBlanc, have stepped aside, leaving Canadians grappling with a party unable to lead or admit its failures. So who do you see becoming the next Liberal leader and unelected Prime Minister of Canada?
I think it'll be Carney. I think it's pretty much, I wouldn't say it's a walkaway right now, but I think it's pretty close. I'll tell you, there's two main reasons why, though. Like, really, in there's sort of an anti-Freeland perspective. First, she pissed off Trudeau by kind of turning on him at the last minute with the whole economic report thing. And I don't blame her. But if you think about how that party operates, obviously there are people above Trudeau, whether it's corporate interests or whatever, that are kind of pushing some buttons here because they have some sort of vested interest. Well, that would have pissed them off too. And if they're the same people that got Trudeau in power, well, now they're upset. So now she doesn't really have the support from the people, right? From the political party itself is what I mean to say. And not necessarily the MPs, all of them, but the people that are really pulling the strings, they could be upset with her, which is fair. Second thing I would say, and you kind of touched on it here, is she's responsible for 90+% of the policies that Trudeau passed, shares in the responsibility, I should say. You don't get to dodge that. Right. So if you're a constituent, if you're, voting in this Liberal race, the last thing you want is someone that's going to do the exact same thing. And even though I think Mark Carney I actually think Mark Carney may be more dangerous because he's probably more intelligent and he's more capable and probably more connected. He's basically this Trudeau in a nicer suit. I think they're both terrible options. Did I say that yet? Okay, good. They're both really terrible options. I do think Carney's going to win.
Yeah. So the Prime Minister's office is the one that you're talking about when it comes to pulling all the strings. It's these big names within Trudeau's inner circle. Again, the Prime Minister's office isn't elected. It's not sourced from MPs. They can bring in whoever they want from it.
Yes.
So Katie Telford has been Trudeau's right-hand person for the last 9 years. Well, actually, Gerald Butts was his prime until he got ousted. Well, he had to step away because of the whole SNC Lavalin scandal. He was the one that took the blow for that, essentially.
Right.
But both of them, both Telford and Butts, are now rallying.
Fucking 6-year-olds
are now rallying behind Carney.
Yeah.
They're making calls on his behalf and such. So Trudeau's team is immediately just rallying around him, which they're the ones with all the power and sway within the Liberal Party.
And
despite them not actually being members of the
right,
Parliament.
but it also, like, if you think about this, if you are those people, put aside how you feel about Freeland for turning on Trudeau, which again I support. But even if you look the other way and you go, okay, strategically, I need to rebuild the brand in this party. You kind of can't really do it from within. Even though Carney's been there, your best opportunity is to pick Carney because, again, Freeland's going to wear the last administration's stain, right? So you take Carney, you get him to start dialing back on some of the policies so he seems more neutral or centered because that's what the country wants right now. And now you've got a brand new revolutionized Liberal Party, but you can't do that with Freeland, if you strategically speaking. So, like, I understand that side of it too. From all accounts, if you're in the Liberal Party, he makes the most sense.
I agree with you. However, you also can't separate Carney from the Liberal Party.
Totally.
Right.
Optically, you can, though, because he wasn't in an official. That's all.
Yeah. And that's such the shadiness, right? Because he was on Jon Stewart just a couple nights ago. And I'll admit his performance on, he did well. He was well spoken. He seemed to have an ounce of charisma. He didn't just come off like a drama teacher that's, putting in his long pauses on purpose for dramatic effect and such. He did come across as genuine, I guess, in that interview. But the big thing with that was at one point he said that he was running as an outsider, right? Well, of course. How are you an outsider? You were the architect of the carbon tax policies. Yes. You're the architect of these big global climate initiatives for this kind of stuff that Trudeau has been implementing. So it's an easy attack vector, I guess, from the conservative angles, because you're like, okay, look, everything we were just dealing with when it comes to Trudeau, all of these policies, I think we all are aware that he was just a mouthpiece. That guy doesn't have an original idea kicking around in his head.
Yes.
This guy is the one that was giving him the ideas.
Yes.
And so it's an easy attack vector for sure.
It is, except that the Liberals control the media. So it's actually very smart from Carney's perspective. Well, I'm an outsider. I'm just coming here to fix things. Yeah, they've made a bit of a mess of things. Yeah, they got a little carried away. I'm going to come and clean up this mess. You can say that because you're an outsider, and 70% of our media is subsidized by the fucking government, plus a significant part of the independent media because they're on the tit of the Bill C-18 money. So yeah, you say that, and now that's the new narrative. Well, he's an outsider. He wasn't really part of the problems, and that's going to prevail because people like you and I don't have a big enough, loud enough voice. So this is the problem you get. So you're seeing the media machine do its thing, and he's playing his part. He's doing a reasonably good job. But you kind of knew this was going to happen. They were going to pick a leader, and no matter what, we weren't going to like them.
Yeah.
For now. Don't get me wrong. I think the Liberal Party could reinvent itself. I think it's going to be a little while. 10, 12 years. You're going to have some fresh blood. You're going to have some new ideas. You're going to have people that are patriotic again. It's going to be amazing. It's just not right now. Anybody that's part of this administration, poison. And they're just trying to hang on to power by any means necessary.
Do you think Poilievre will play dirty enough to bring up the whole Ghislaine Maxwell stuff?
I think he'll keep it in his back pocket. I think he'll try to avoid it if he can. But if he feels like he's on his heels, he will.
Let me just add some context here for the listeners. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, pictures of Mark Carney with Ghislaine Maxwell surfaced online. And even when I first saw them, my initial reaction was, so what? There's pictures of Trump with Epstein. It's sure. It goes to show that he does hang out in very elite circles. So the fact that he would say he's an outsider, again, that's another avenue of a way to be like, you're hanging out with royalty. You're not, you're an insider. But anyways, when digging a little bit deeper into the whole Carney and Maxwell thing, Carney's sister-in-law is somebody named Lady Tanya Rotherwick. And
he's really a man of the people.
Right.
His sister-in-law she's a lady.
Yeah.
Come on.
So anyways, Maxwell, the pictures were at a festival, were taken at a festival that is done on Carney's sister-in-law's estate.
Right.
And Maxwell has also been known to use the guest house of his sister-in-law. So you're telling me that your sister-in-law's friend, that, and also their excuse for the whole thing was, we just crossed paths at social events. First of all, he said events. So, okay, how often were you hanging around this girl? But second of all, sure, if you just happened to be at the same party, but you're telling me that you were at your sister-in-law's island for a festival and you weren't also at that house quite frequently? This was just a one.
Doesn't really track.
Yeah. So either way, there is so many attack vectors for Carney, but do you think do you think anybody at this point could turn the Liberal Party around?
I don't think so. I've been saying this since this all kind of happened. I think that they're going to strike a deal with the NDP to stay in power till October, just so that they can try to rebuild some brand equity. NDP can continue to try to do the same, pass some NDP policies, which are crazy. And then just try to put themselves in a position where they're like a respectable party again. I don't think they can do it in 6 months. I don't think it matters who it is. I think they're going to get Kim Campbell. They're going to get walloped in the election. That's just what I think is going to happen. But they're just doing the best they can. And it's not about here's the thing. None of this has to do with the Liberal Party or politics. It has to do with profit and power. Mm-hmm. That's what this is about. You're a part of this organization, this party that has all the power and is raking money out of Canadians' pockets right now. You know the system. You want access to that money and you want that power. So you're doing whatever you can. That's the game of politics these days at the federal level. So that's all this is. And they are just doing their best strategically to try to maintain that power and make as much money as they possibly can. And anybody that argues, just look at the track record.
I think part of it too is that these people are so intertwined in that very elite sphere. Again, the World Economic Forum types, like Carney helped write the financial reforms for the World Economic Forum for all this net zero crap.
While he's invested in pipelines in the Middle East.
Exactly.
Just for reference. Like, the guy's such a cock.
Actually, let's pull that video up. That would be a good one to show, because this is likely what we're going to see more of over the coming months as a election ramps up in Canada.
Do you support the Prime Minister's decision to veto the Northern Gateway pipeline, Mr. Carney?
I understand the veto of the Northern Gateway pipeline.
You support it?
Given both environmental and commercial reasons.
Do you support it?
I think it was sensible. I wasn't involved in the decision, but I think it was the right decision.
And yet your company has invested billions of dollars in oil companies in both Brazil and the UAE to buy pipelines. You bought billions of dollars of pipelines as a company in the last 5 years. Do you support those investments?
Mr. Poilievre, there is a global energy system, and one of the issues, I'm trying to explain a bit of how the economy works. One of the
Thank
issues,
you so much.
Thank you so much.
One of the issues for this committee in thinking about a sustainable transition.
Do you support it?
Where is Canada's role in those as energy transitions from fossil fuels to renewables? And in different jurisdictions, into different geography, it matters. It matters. Okay. And this is a fundamental point.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. This is a fundamental. You're finally getting to a point.
You've exceeded
that
the
is
time.
Relevant to this committee's inquiry.
What you're saying is you oppose pipelines in Canada, but you support them in the UAE and in Brazil. That's what you've actually said.
There are specific.
That's your double standard.
It is not a double standard.
It is a double standard. You make billions of dollars off foreign pipelines, and you shut them down here at home, putting our people out of work.
That you are a representative of the Canadian people, and one of your responsibilities, including at this committee,
is to fight for Canadian jobs, and not foreign jobs like you.
Exactly, to fight for Canadian jobs. The types of Canadian jobs that are durable and are going to move forward.
Right.
I grew up in Alberta. I know the innovative nature of that.
Well, go try to give that answer back in Alberta, because I grew up there too, and I can tell you the people. I can tell you the people of Alberta would be ashamed with the answer you just gave. That you would give billions of dollars to foreign pipelines while not allowing Canadians to build pipelines here at home. That is the kind of elite Davos hypocrisy.
Continue, Mr. Poilievre.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. You've just said you support your leader's decision to kill a Western Canadian pipeline that ships the most ethical product in the world. Yet you also support your company's decision to invest billions of dollars in foreign pipelines in Brazil and in the UAE. It's clear that this is not about the environment. If it were, you'd be consistent and you'd oppose fossil fuels everywhere. But you're happy to profit off of foreign fossil fuel companies while killing jobs among our own people. How do you address that flagrant hypocrisy? It smacks of the Davos elite at its worst.
Nice.
Okay. First thing, absolute. I support Canadian jobs, and I support Canadian jobs today and tomorrow. And in order to have those jobs tomorrow, what we need and what this committee can contribute is an energy transition.
The best thing that we can do for the Canadian jobs is to decimate them.
Yeah. Get rid of like half of them. Wow.
And he, that video
from like 2020 or something.
I was going to say that video is from a few years ago. However, in that Jon Stewart interview as well, he did take aim at Canada's oil and gas sector and highlighted how it is. He said it's responsible for 30% of Canada's emissions. And so let's do some math on that. Round it out to 1.5% of global emissions are
3.45.
Canadian. So yeah,
0.45%
So-
global.
yeah. So okay, cool. You're going to decimate our industry for that.
Doesn't even make any sense. I was listening to something the other day. I forget what it was. I can't take credit for this. So if we think about this globally, because climate change is a global problem, apparently. If we were selling our natural gas just to the countries that currently want it, there's like 4 or 5 in Europe, in Japan as well. If we just sold them our natural gas, the net positive, because of them burning natural gas instead of coal, would actually decrease the carbon footprint significantly more than Canadians could on their own. So if we just actually sold our natural gas and didn't worry about this nonsense at home, we'd actually be doing a better job for the world.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
This actually kind of leads us into our next story, which is Alberta and Ottawa clash as Liberals consider cutting off energy exports in response to Trump's tariffs. Trade tensions between Canada and the U.S. under President-elect Donald Trump have sparked debate over retaliatory measures. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly supports a united national front, considering drastic actions like cutting energy exports to counter Trump's proposed 25% tariffs. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith opposes federal interference in provincial energy exports, warning it could trigger a national unity crisis. She advocates collaboration with the U.S. officials to protect businesses and consumers. The divide reflects broader challenges in addressing Trump's protectionist policies, with economic forecasts predicting job losses and higher costs, forcing leaders to balance economic security, unity, and Canada-U.S. relations. So, should Canada respond with retaliatory restrictions and tariffs?
They don't really have a choice, right? It's kind of the like, you don't bring a sword to a gunfight. This is a gunfight. You're going to have to use the same weapon. It's the only thing that really makes sense here. I think it's how you speak the same language, right? The challenge you have here, so people are like, well, how can the federal government get involved if it's provincial economics? Well, they control the border.
Right.
So that's how the federal government can kind of wrap this up, just for anybody wondering or anybody interested in how that's working out. I don't really think they have a choice, but this already happened the last time Trump was in, and we retaliated with kind of some nonsense tariffs, actually. But yeah, you don't really have a choice. You're playing a bit of a game of chicken, right? That's the reality here. I don't know the best solution here until we actually see what tariffs are being put on. Because Trump's like everything. And then he's like, okay, well, if you fix the borders, we don't know what it's going to be on. Okay, so he's definitely going to put on some. Kind of like call it 100, land at 50. What are the 50%? What is the impact on the economy? How do we just go, okay, here's what you've done. Here's what we have to do to try to balance things out. There's going to be some carnage. There's going to be some job losses. It's going to be a bit of a mess. How long does it actually go on? Do we come to a different kind of agreement? The thing is you can't answer this until you get into the fight. So here's my point. Take this analogy for perspective. Consider this a UFC fight. America's putting in their pound for pound best. He's 175 pounds. Let's go. We have someone else that can jump in the cage that can do the same thing. Now we've got our own 175 pounder in there. He's also a killer. So that's why tariffs with tariffs. That's the point. You don't want a 175er fighting a 135er. So use tariffs. That's what this game is. Now, we both know that each of these guys are super skilled. They're very capable, and they're going to get in this cage and fight. That's all we know about these tariffs so far. That's it. So I can't tell you how this is going to play out until the fight starts. All I know is we can be as prepared as possible by being willing to drop retaliatory tariffs. But we have to wait until these guys start throwing punches. So it's like this fight will play out and we will see where things land, but it needs to be further along before we can pick a winner in a sense. I think we can nil things out and it will be a draw, but we have to wait until more action is taken before we can actually provide a real solution. That's kind of what I'm saying.
The way I look at it is there can only ever be peace, whether it's in a physical war or an economic war, under two scenarios, which is that you have two people that have an equal level of power or strength, or the one that has less power or strength is aware of it and admits it and essentially keels over and just goes and submits.
Yes.
We're in that second scenario where, you made the analogy of two fighters getting into the cage and these tariffs allow us to, walk in at the same weight class. It doesn't, I don't see it that way. I see this as a 265 pounder, somebody that's barely getting into the weight limit of the UFC because they're the largest empire in human history, compared to a flyweight, a 125 pounder that is, for the last 10 years, has not shown any considerable improvement at all. So our GDP per capita has stagnated. Our productivity has stagnated. The only reason that we're growing economically is because we're flooding our country with the third world, which is boosting our GDP short term, but it creates a mountain of issues long term. And little things like, you've got Doug Ford sitting there saying, well, yes, we should cut off our energy, or you've got Ottawa saying that they want to block oil and gas going to America. It's not an attack vector because it hits us just as hard. Like, for instance, American tariffs will put certain issues on themselves. So their gas prices will likely increase slightly, all of this kind of stuff. But they've got so much more weight to throw around, where if you factor in Canada, so in 2023, Canada produced approximately 4.6 million barrels of oil per day. Of this, about 3.8 million were exported, with 97% of those exports destined for the United States. America is a net exporter of oil as well. So the fact that if we cut off their oil supply, they can just go, oh, well, we don't export as much anymore. We keep more for ourselves. That problem's gone right off the bat for them. But then also we have the issue of the fact that Canada doesn't refine its oil at all. We ship it. So we take the crude oil, a lot of it, most of it out of Alberta's oil sands. We ship that to Texas, who then refines it and turns it into usable oil. So we're also cutting off our refinery. But so for instance, Canada's domestic refining capacity is around 1.7 million barrels per day. Given that a significant portion of Canadian crude oil is exported, a smaller percentage is refined domestically. So only as of 2020, approximately 17% of Canada's crude oil production was refined within the country. We're going to cut. If we can't send our oil to America to refine it, we're maxed out at 17%. So it's not a smart play to try to, and at this point, it sounds bad. I am of that mentality again, that you should negotiate from a place of strength, but we have to admit that we're not strong right now.
Okay, so there's a couple things I'd point out there. They have the pound for pound guy in 175. That's what I was saying. They got the best guy. We're putting in our best guy, so at least it's the same category. They're definitely in a position of strength, but we want to do everything we can to sort of, again, fight with the same weapon. Now, when you think about America, we're their second largest importer, around 13%. Mexico's their number one, around 15%. I think China's just under us. Now, they are our biggest exporter significantly. It's huge, right? So you kind of think, you're like, okay, I get the dependency issue, for sure. But when you're talking about this just from a tariffs perspective, you do have to consider that it isn't necessarily about how much bigger they are and how much more economics they have and how much more powerful they are. You have to think about it in terms of what's fair is fair for the economy and how does this actually play out for Canadians. So we can redistribute our resources. They can go to other places. They can go to Europe. Like I've said in our previous conversation, there are 5 or 6 European countries that already want our energy and they're willing to pay a very good price for it, right? So that's kind of already part of the deal, part of the operation. We could also increase our energy exports, which we should. We all know we should. But that would also help us level the playing field and not have to depend on them so much. So we can redistribute a reasonable amount depending where this tariff war starts. Again, it's right now he says all of it. Okay, but what does it actually end up being? Is it this 50%? Is it this 20%? So you kind of have to see how that's going to play out. But I do think we've got more options than just seceding, essentially. Just going, okay, you win, I back out. Like, yeah, I'm 125, you're 265. Sure, the size is there, but there are other, it does feel a little David and Goliath. I get it. But there are other moves we can make than just sit there and take it, because I think we're going to get crushed. I think Trump's game is who's got the balls to stand up to me? What are you going to do about it? I'm going to make your life fucking difficult and I'm going to redirect my resources. Fuck you. That's kind of, I don't think you have a choice. I think you have to try to match their weight. I think otherwise you're going to become America. You know
why is this happening? Right. That's a major piece
America
of
first.
This whole puzzle.
America first.
And the public reason that Trump has given for these tariffs is because of the border crisis. So again,
yeah, it's bullshit. Listen to him on podcast a month ago, you'd hear a different story.
Yeah, and that's why I said public.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of this is also just a vendetta against Trudeau, so that he can put Canada into a really rough position, because you already see it, whether it's guys like Elon Musk are just close in their corner.
Girl, not even in charge anymore.
You see them taking aim at these progressive Davos types all around the world, whether it's Keir Starmer.
This is good.
This
is good. Just so everybody knows, like, this is a really positive thing for the Western world to see. We need our own 175er to start fighting all these bitches. And that's kind of what Elon and Trump are doing in a sense. So I don't agree with every move, but on the macro scale, I'm kind of for what they're doing.
Well, I wonder how much of this is to essentially pressure the Liberals out of policy. Because again, look, okay, one of the numbers that I said to you before we started was Doug Ford, right? His team has advised him that he can see unemployment rise by 500 to 600,000 people if these tariffs are put in place for an elongated period of time. That would double the unemployment of Ontario and put us into double-digit percentage-wise. At that point, like, if you squeeze Canada that hard, you are going to have the general public of Canada begging to get real leadership in there, because, like, even the scenario that we're in a prorogation right now. So our government is frozen. Our federal government is frozen.
Yes.
Like, it's actually hard to comprehend how bad of a scenario we're actually in right now.
Not really after the last 9 years. Honestly, no. For me, I'm just kind of like, par for the course. This just based on what he's done, I'm not surprised. Like, are you actually, like, I'm not at all surprised.
I wouldn't say I'm surprised, but you can still be shocked at the fact that this is where we're at.
Maybe I'm just like, I've had too much. Like, it's just not there anymore. There's no shock response. I'm just like, yeah, all right, cool. He's definitely coming out as gay next. That's his move. I'm telling you, that's Trudeau's move. March 15th.
I do wonder how much of this is could just completely essentially erase these globalists out of Canada. Or then there's also the other aspect where, hey, maybe he's trying to economically punish Canada to the point that we will be begging for him to take in Canada as a 51st state.
So one of the things that he had said on a podcast a while back is he was a big fan of President William McKinley. McKinley was big on tariffs. And from what now McKinley, should mention, got assassinated, but what the thing is from the story he was telling, I can't corroborate every detail, but the tariffs were so successful that America had a surplus, is what they were saying. And I don't know that they didn't have any debt, but what I think his point was they didn't have a deficit. Their budget was, they were not spending all the money they were bringing in, and they were at least digging away at the debt at the time. So the tariff program really worked. So I think he's of the mind, based on what he had said, I'm going to bring in these tariffs. I'm going to be able to lower taxes for Americans. We're going to do America first. We're going to work on manufacturing at home. We're going to rebuild America to be a powerhouse again. And then he said something about, like, strategic trading partners and this and this and this. So I think that he lets up on Mexico because they're their number one trading partner. And they kind of need them for a lot of resources right now. But I think you and I have had this conversation. The world is going to change and the GDP is going to start dropping. We kind of know this. So if you think about this 10, 20 years down the road, what do you have to do? Well, North America is actually the power corridor. They're in the best spot. You can survive off everything that's in that zone, that land, right? So maybe that's why he's trying to make a move on these things now. I don't really know. But the game plan is not globalization. It is more nationalism. And I'm talking economically. That's what makes the most sense. So he may see this and he may go, we need to rebuild America's economy. We need to start chewing away at this debt. We need to start doing manufacturing at home again. Thinking like just post World War II in a sense of manufacturing, not necessarily where they were in terms of like the power grab. But so you think like that, and now it starts to make sense. Now you kind of go, okay, the tariffs, they seem very punitive. So if you don't give tariffs a reason to a country, they're met with major pushback. So here's what Trump does this thing where it's not his fault. I'm not really trying to bag on Trump. This is just how he operates. He doesn't really take responsibility for mistakes. Not his thing. So he's not going to go, I'm going to throw tariffs on your country because I want to rebuild my economy. He'll go, I'm throwing tariffs on you because you're fucking border. That's why I'm doing it. You give them something they can't stop. You give them a ghost they can't. It's the war on drugs. You can't stop drugs. It's a war on terrorism. You can't stop terrorism. It's a war on illegal immigration. It's you guys. You can't stop that shit. It's not going to happen. So he can sort of, and maybe there's a 2-in-1 here. Maybe he's benefiting from crushing the liberal Western order, which does need to die, but is also pushing his longer, more nationalized agenda to rebuild America, which were the things he was saying a few months ago. So I mean, it's again, I don't even disagree with it. I know it's going to affect us negatively, but if I'm an American, I'm not. But if I were, I see the point. I see the value.
No, and I again, from an America first perspective, I can definitely see that as well. But one thing is, we should maybe even just do this because I've realized a lot of people's eyes gloss over whenever you mention tariffs, and we're maybe a little bit far into the conversation to do this, but a lot of people don't even understand how tariffs operate. Okay. So like tariffs are essentially import or export taxes.
Yes.
So any goods that go into America, the federal government will place a 25% tax on it that will be paid for by the purchaser within America. And so, that just essentially will price all Canadian goods out of the market.
Yes. Unless, like you said, they're essentials like uranium. You can't get anywhere. Well, then it's 25% more. Deal with it.
Right. But the one thing that I do think, is important to note there is that there is multiple reasons I think that he's doing this. And also when you look at who Trump is, right? He's the business negotiator type. And in a business negotiation, first you try to use all leverage you have in it. And you also don't let them know your true position, like where you are, where you want to be, where you want to go, what you're doing things for.
Yes.
So that's who we're dealing with. But I do wonder how bad we'll let things get before we actually do something about this, because it looks like we're not prepared at all.
Well, the thing is, look, this may have to be a hard lesson to Canadians. If you're exporting 60 to 80% of your goods to one country, shake it up a little. Like, this is obviously not working. You can export a lot of our resources. Are maybe fungible is the wrong word, but they could go anywhere. No one really cares if it goes to America. It's not just a part of the American economy. It could be Europe. It could be anywhere. I understand it costs a little more to ship overseas and stuff like this, but okay, this is where the economy is going to move. We need to diversify perhaps a little bit more in the short term to kind of get through this. And maybe Canadians will also start thinking about doing more manufacturing at home again, especially if we have an open border letting all these people in. Do more manufacturing.
But Jonathan, we can't sell our oil and gas to Europe because we have to meet our climate goals.
Right. So as long as the ideological lean is here.
And so that's the thing is, we have a government that's incapable of fighting back against this. And then we also have a government that what it would take to fight back against this isn't interested in doing that because of ideological reasons.
Yes.
It's insane.
Yes, but I think they're going to have to drop it. I don't think they're going to have a choice.
Hey everyone, we hope you're enjoying this episode. If so, please consider leaving us a kind review wherever you're listening. If even just a quarter of our weekly audience did so, we'd instantly become one of the top-rated Canadian podcasts. We appreciate you helping us out, and now back to the show. All right, moving on to our next story. We've got CRA versus NHL. Tax dispute over signing bonuses could reshape Canadian sports. Canada's tax agency is battling hockey stars Patrick Marleau, Jake Muzzin, and John Tavares over millions in taxes on signing bonuses. The dispute centers on whether the bonuses offered to attract players to the Toronto Maple Leafs should be taxed at 15% under a Canada-US treaty or over 50% as employment income. The CRA argues the bonuses are tied to fulfilling contracts, justifying the higher tax rate. A ruling favoring the CRA could harm Canadian teams' ability to attract talent, exacerbating challenges posed by high taxes. The case underscores frustrations with Canada's tax system and its impact on success. So, how will our tax system affect the future of sports in Canada?
Trudeau's ruining sports in Canada. Like, this is Howie right now, dude. This is very dangerous.
The Maple Leafs even suck because of him.
Dude, this is exactly what's happening right now. It's already hard enough to attract talent because of our tax system. We top tax bracket in Canada is like 53-55% in that range. Plus you pay an HST on anything you spend. You can't get that money back. If I were these guys, I'd tell them I'm a corporation. No, I'm the corporation of X. I will sign for your team. My money goes offshore. This is a really bad look for Canada. Like I said, if you go play in Texas, there's no state tax. Like, you're keeping 75 to 80% of your money. Those numbers could be a little off, but I'm pretty close. What I don't know is how much you lose when it scales up. But if you make 100 grand, you keep like 79,000 in Texas. So, I mean, it's much more favorable. I get it. As an athlete, like, what are you doing? Same thing happened with two ball players this year, Russell Martin and Josh Donaldson. Now, they won their case. It was a little different, but they won their case. And I think it was over just under 10 million between the two of them, maybe a little less, but that's the range they're in. So I have hope that this goes away. But if it doesn't, if this passes and that's the new precedent, pick a new fucking team to be a fan of, because all teams in Canada, unless it's the CFL, are going to suck. Why would I be here? This is so hard for me. But I'm a huge sports fan. This is very, very frustrating because I'm already looking at the Blue Jays. I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. I'm pissed off. A lot of the Blue Jays right now, we're losing all the good players. Our pitching is mediocre at best. Vladdy Guerrero doesn't want to be here. Bo Bichette's leaving after next year too. We're not going to have a team. So here's the problem. People argue, yeah, there's ebbs and flows and blah, 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 and farm team and et cetera, whatever. But if this is a new case that will set a precedent. If it sets a precedent and we need to rebuild from the bottom up essentially with the Blue Jays, which is crazy because the payroll's super high. It's insane. But if we have to rebuild and now this precedent exists, how do you rebuild? You have to like Billy Bean a team where you just build them based on stats, a bunch of losers that'll take $1 million a year. Otherwise, the Jays won't have a team. I imagine the Maple Leafs and a lot of the other hockey teams will look similar. I think the saving grace in hockey is that like a pretty good chunk of the teams are still Canadian. So people will just kind of bite the bullet and they'll want to be close to home. But this will affect sports in Canada throughout the entire country. This is ridiculous. Fuck off. Fuck off.
Well, I'll just pull this part a little bit more because again, you're talking about the precedent it will set, and yes, this is essentially the main point of this whole argument, which is that obviously when certain athletes sign, they take a bonus up front as a signing bonus, and then their salary is something else. It's a separate negotiation. But what the CRA is trying to do, because let's say some of these people, when they initially receive that signing bonus, aren't living in Canada or live in America, they only have to pay a 15% tax rate on it because it's a lump sum, one-time payment, whatever, right? What the CRA is now trying to say is that, well, yes, that one-time lump sum is actually tied to the fact that you're, say, signing a contract for 5 years of employment on this team. Therefore, it's tied to your employment. Therefore, it's income, that it's actual annual income. It's not a signing bonus. It's not a one-time fee. It's part of your yearly salary, and they're trying to break it out into that.
Which
right?
is bullshit because it's not even part of the salary cap.
Exactly. So that's the whole argument on the CRA side. But to your point, that's what this would do. It would set a precedent for all other cases across all other sports.
This will be a net negative if they win. Let me explain how. They go, well, we're going to take those money from those athletes.
Right.
Yeah, okay, how much money are you going to get? You're going to get a few $1 million. Here's what's going to happen. Now, no high earners are coming to Canada in terms of athletes, or much less. So you already lost your money there. But now people don't support the team as much because they're not doing as well. Now you lost money from that taxes within the economy from team support, going to games, hotels, spending money at bars and restaurants afterwards as well. That's all going to slow down as well. The knock-on effects of this are significant. These guys just can't see it. This is ridiculous. It's very frustrating for me. God.
Well, actually, Thomas Sowell points out in one of his books too about how when Calvin Coolidge, who was an American president back, I believe it was like in 1920s when Coolidge, might have been even a little bit before that. But anyways, he lowered the
23 to 29.
He lowered the tax rates within America, and it actually led to a increase in tax revenue.
Yes.
To your point, because look, we're seeing this across outside of even sports, right? The higher that our corporate taxes go, the higher our capital gains taxes go and such, you just start having wealthy people not bring any money here. Like, look, the most ridiculous example that's happening right now of like just tax oppression in Canada is the capital gains tax, right? They were proposing to raise the capital gains past $250,000 to a 66% tax rate, which is insane. Like, I have an issue with taxes across the board, but at any point that you can say, you said our top tax bracket is 53%, right? The very concept that the government would get more of my money than I do,
insane.
Like that, I cannot. Like, I think a certain thing goes off in my head after 50% where I go, oh, this is war. Like,
Yeah.
you're taking more than you're leaving me with. That, like, 40% still
You're
too
a
high.
slave in a sense.
100%. And but so with this CRA tax grab, they proposed putting it up to 66%. It never got legislated. It didn't get through Parliament. It wasn't approved. Yet the Liberal Party of Canada is telling the CRA to go ahead and collect it, which amounts to $18 billion. So the federal government of Canada right now is legitimately stealing $18 billion from citizens. Like, it's not even, there's the cliche taxation is theft, right? Which I think it is. But this is taxation without even this is theft without even the illusion of legitimacy.
Yes.
It's just straight up, we're taking your shit. So yeah, to the point of the whole conversation, why would anyone want to come here right now if they have money?
It is so unappealing. I hate this place. It's so frustrating. Sports are one of the few things people turn to even when life is tough too. Like you and I were talking about like sports loyalty the other day, and it doesn't really vibe with you. But for me, it's like it's an escape. It's an escape if you love your team and you want to watch them, whether it's football, baseball, hockey, whatever. You just dive into it, you love it, you become enthralled, and you stop thinking about everything else. You really do enjoy it, and you vie for the times that they win, and you fight through it when they're losing, and you just show your support. But it's like becomes a part of your identity for a lot of people. And so this is actually quite significant. Like, this really frustrates me. I think about moving to Texas, and I'm like, I don't know, I guess I'll pick the fucking Astros. I don't know. I'm not going to pick the Rangers, so I'm going to go with the Astros, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, it's frustrating to me because I never thought I'd be like, hey, even if I move, I remember thinking moving when I was younger, I'll move, but I'll still be a Toronto fan. And it's crazy because I still want to be, and I'm still loyal to the Toronto teams, even though I'm not a huge fan of the country right now. But this is making me kind of be like, can I even be a fan of them? If they are systematically broken down and unable to build a team because of our tax system, fuck this whole place. Anyway.
All right, moving on to another reason to fuck this place. The tragic toll of Canada's healthcare waitlists. A report from secondstreet.org exposes the dire state of Canada's healthcare system, revealing that at least 15,000 Canadians died in 2023-2024 while waiting for surgery or diagnostic scans, with the actual number potentially reaching 28,000 due to incomplete data. Since 2018, over 74,000 deaths have occurred among patients on wait lists for treatments ranging from life-saving procedures to quality of life improvements. Despite Canada's $372 billion healthcare spending, outcomes lag behind other universal systems. SecondStreet.org urges governments to track and disclose waitlist deaths annually to improve accountability and drive reform, highlighting the urgent need for a system that prioritizes timely care. So the whole thing here, just before I get into the question about the data, is SecondStreet.org reached out to the hospitals among provinces and started just asking them for this. And they realized that a large portion of them aren't even tracking how many patients die while on wait lists. So that's where the incomplete data comes from. And so he said we could only really actually get data for about 60%. And then so they extrapolated that out, and that's how they got the 28,000 number. But anyways, can Canada's healthcare system be saved at this point?
Oh my gosh. Not through government intervention. We know this for sure. This is the problem you have right now with the healthcare system, is that there's still this generation of people standing on this free healthcare makes Canada great. Universal healthcare, that makes this country so wonderful. Does it? 30,000 people are dying right now a year, potentially. Up to 30,000 a year are dying because they just can't get treatment. The system's very broken. And what's happened is, if you look at the number, it says 74,000 since 2018. So just let's back into some math there. That's over 6 years. So when you math that out, that's about 12,000 a year. That's how that would work, which means we're scaling up. It's getting worse, except our spending's increasing. So we're spending more money, tax dollars, on a system that's clearly broken and only getting worse, and more people are dying. So it's very, very clear that government intervention and more government spending is not the solution. We have to privatize. That's the only way this works. You run a private-public split like they're doing in some Norwegian countries. I think Switzerland and Norway are the ones that are doing it the best, if I remember correctly. That's the only way through this. You give people an opportunity to actually make some money, because Economics drive everything. Capitalism is a system that works and that got us here. And they always take the overflow from the public sector, which is covered by tax dollars. This makes perfect sense. Then what will happen, like everything else, the natural order of supply and demand will take shape, and this will all make sense. Just like if you have a restaurant and you're the only one in town, you're super busy. You can't feed everybody. So 5 more restaurants open up. Okay, well, they're still busy. 6 opens up. Oh, now we're not quite as busy. 7, now there's 10. Okay, now we've got too much supply. We don't need this much. So you notice that, well, now 5 of those restaurants, they kind of just slowly fizzle out, and now you've only got 5. Supply and demand works. Capitalism works. You need to apply this system to healthcare because there's no fucking way that these people can fix the problem they created.
Well, to your point about private and public, so 11% of Canadians sought care abroad to avoid these bottlenecks of wait times. So that money is just, again, leaking outside of our economy, right? If 11%,
that's a
lot.
huge number. I've gone and done medical tourism myself a couple times.
Yeah. So, it is insane that we don't give the option for privatized care because, again, if I can afford it, then why would I wait? Why would I go on these wait lists? In that one article, and I just want to be clear, the whole dying on the wait list thing, wait list across the board. So not all of it is necessarily like life threatening that they're not getting. So say, for instance, somebody could need eye surgery for their glaucoma and they could die while on the wait list for that. It's not really the cause of death, but it does show that some people are still suffering for a year or two. Actually, in that article, they talked that some of the wait lists reached up to 14 years for surgery, for somebody to get surgery. Now, again, that I'm sure that surgery was not needed to it didn't need to happen imminently for that person's life or something. But the very fact that I'm sitting here going, I want a medical procedure done and I have to wait 14 years for it. That's insane.
That's bananas. That's if someone's like, hey, I think we're going to have this technology in like 14 years. I'd be like, all right, okay, I think I can wait it out. If they're just like, nah, it's a long waiting list. I'm like, you're insane. You're insane. And then you're still paying the average taxpayers paying up like $12,000 a year for healthcare here. And you got to wait 14 years to get treatment. Come on, bro. What are we talking about? 12, 24, 144, 48. So that's 168,000 tax dollars you're paying before you get your treatment. Get the fuck out of here.
And it just came out as well from CD Howe Institute that Canada ranks 9th out of 10 in high income countries, outperforming only the United States. So, and that was in regards to access to care. What they pointed out is that, sure, once you get care, it's actually pretty good when you measure it to international standards.
Yes.
But it's the fact that our healthcare system cannot take care of this many people.
Yeah, it's bursting at the seams. I like to say this every time we talk about this. Pretty much all of my interactions with anybody in the healthcare system have always been positive. They've been good people. They've been caring, and I've appreciated them. It's the system that's bursting at the seams and the administrative and bureaucratic nonsense that's messing this all up.
And just to put it in perspective of how necessary I think it is that we start opening up to a private sector as well. Again, I don't think the public healthcare should just be abolished, but I think we do need to start alleviating some of that pressure. And this isn't a radical idea either.
No, it's rational and it works. And we've seen around the world that it works.
Yeah, like Netherlands, one of the best healthcare systems in the world, has that, a private and public healthcare split.
Is that what it was, Netherlands? Yeah.
So CD Howe report estimates Canada will need $2 trillion to address the challenges posed by an aging population. So remember, too, to keep in mind when it comes to this topic, all the baby boomers are about to start needing mass amounts of healthcare.
Yeah.
And we have an economy that is stagnating, if not shrinking.
Yes.
In real terms, not necessarily.
That's interesting, terms. Actually, when you point that out. I'll tell you why is because we're shoveling in people as quickly as we can to try to cover the social programs, but we're not even thinking about the skyrocketing cost of healthcare. It could double. Mm-hmm. So forget the social programs. $372 billion. Is that what it was this year in 2024?
Something like that.
Yeah. So that's like I know it's not all federal spending. It's provincial, federal, and municipal, but our federal budget's like $550 billion. It is by far our largest expense. And it could buy those numbers because the thing is, you don't get to decide when it goes up.
It was 372.
Right. You don't get to decide really when it goes up. It goes up as it's needed to go up based on the population's needs. That's what I'm saying. So you could see this increase to 450, 550, 600 over the next 5 years due to the demand from baby boomers. So where's this coming from? To a broken system that's not working. What are we talking about?
Right.
You got to go private.
And also, and then factor in MAID as well. So you look at it and you go, okay, if you extrapolate that data out, they got 28,000 the number of people that were dying on wait lists. Then add in MAID to that as well, which is that in 2022, 13,000 people died on MAID. So that's really 41,000 essentially. Now, that's how many people are dying within the healthcare system sphere, essentially. Yes. Again, not all those deaths on wait lists can be attributed to it, but again, just for the number's sake, 41,000.
Yes.
Now consider that just over 50,000 Canadians died from COVID over the entire pandemic period. So yearly, just from MAID and wait lists, is equivalent to the entire pandemic.
Which is about 10% of the deaths in Canada every year.
Insane.
Yeah, I'm pretty close. I'm within like 1 or 2%. And I'm shooting low. It's probably higher. Yeah, wild, eh?
All right, next story. We've got nearly 50,000 international students missing from Canadian colleges. Canada's international student program faces scrutiny after IRCC data revealed nearly 50,000 students failed to attend designated schools last spring, representing 6.9% of the total population. Non-compliance rates varied, with India contributing almost 20,000 no-shows, Rwanda at 48% no-shows, so they had roughly 1,600 foreign students, and 800 of those never showed up for classes, and Iran at 11.6%. Allegations link some students to illegal border crossings or work in Canada while seeking residency. Reporting gaps left over 23,000 students unaccounted for, raising concerns about oversight. Former economist Henry Lowton suggests upfront tuitions to payments to deter abuse. Rising asylum claims and systemic exploitation highlight the need for urgent reform to restore integrity and sustainability.
This is insane, right? They're basically just using this as a loophole to enter the country. Then they're applying for some sort of asylum, not even going to school and just hanging out here. That's it. And they're here.
Or illegally crossing into America as well.
Yeah, even that as well. Yeah, for sure. Now it's primarily being used for scams, it seems, or just access to the country. 100%. It's insane.
You also factor in the one part there too about the asylum seeking. So this is what started to happen for a lot of these people is, okay, they come here as international students. Let's say even whether they do the schoolwork or not, a lot of them afterwards want to stay.
Yes.
And if they can't get approved for permanent residency, then they've found the loophole that they can just apply for asylum,
yes,
which essentially buys them a year or two before that asylum claim is actually processed. But here's the real kicker there is that while they're on asylum, they get government handouts.
So a lot of these people just know that now. They're not even trying to worry about the education side of it. They just come in here and apply, stick around for as long as they can, make that money. Then they just kind of go from there. They probably reapply or they just navigate to the States. Cool. Good system, guys. Well thought out.
And what was that video you did recently? I think I'm spot on with this number, but it could differ slightly. $82,000 per year for an asylum seeker.
Yeah, you're about right. That's just for lodging.
Yeah.
I think that's just for like food and lodging. That's it. Wow.
So it costs more. It costs the taxpayer, like they get more from a taxpayer annually than the average Canadian makes working.
They get more than the average Canadian family of four takes home. Yeah, dude. Yeah.
All right, last story for the day. We've got Meta ends fact-checking program in the U.S., introduces X-style community notes. Meta is ending its U.S. fact-checking program, replacing it with a community-driven note system inspired by Elon Musk's platform X. CEO Mark Zuckerberg frames this shift as a return to Meta's free expression roots. The fact-checking initiative, launched after Trump's 2016 election, faced criticism for political bias. The new system encourages users to vote on contextual notes, aiming for transparency without censorship. Meta is also easing content policies, reducing proactive removals, and reintroducing political content to feeds in response to user feedback. Zuckerberg highlights these changes as vital for restoring trust and promoting open dialogue on the platform. So do you think Zuckerberg had a legitimate change of conscience, or he's just rolling with the political winds?
I think it's a little bit of both. So earlier you were talking about a situation where a 135-pound man has to fight a 265-pound man. So you do what you need to do to get by. Mark Zuckerberg does not strike me as an alpha character. I like that he does jiu-jitsu. I like that he takes care of himself. He looks good. I actually like the guy from what I follow. I have no issues with him whatsoever, honestly. Sure, he's made some bad decisions. We all have. His are just very impactful. That's the difference. But he's not the kind of guy. He's not an Elon Musk that'll just be like, go fuck yourself. I'm going to do what I want. He doesn't have it in him to put up that fight primarily. So I think he was moving with the political winds primarily, but I do believe it was against his conscience. I just don't think he had the will to fight back. I think it's actually both. Now, I will give him a little bit of credit. It's hard to, at scale, manage a platform with, I think they've got daily on all their platforms, 3.2 billion people per day using their platforms. I think that's correct. That's huge. That's nearly half the earth. So it's very hard to, at scale, manage, any type of censorship initiative or anything like this. Now, he explained something on the Joe Rogan podcast that I'll bring up for context. What they're changing is the accuracy of the parameter. So they used to do this thing where if you want to try to catch bad guys online, say selling drugs, this is the example they used. Well, how confident do you have to be that person's actually selling drugs to pull down their account? And they would move this thing as a sliding scale. So if you want to catch, if you put that to 99%, you have to have 99% confidence that this person's a drug dealer or you can't pull down their thing. No, don't forget, they're using AI, right? You only catch about 20% of the drug dealers because you have to be so confident. So if you dial that back to 90% confidence, now you catch like 60%. But then you also catch 1 in 10 people that are not drug dealers and they lose their accounts and they get censored. And then if you dial it back to 80%, you catch almost everybody who is doing it, but 2 out of 10 people are losing their accounts, which is millions and millions of people a day are getting censored because you've dialed back how confident your programming needs to be. So what he's doing is he's dialing up all the programming to like 99%. So the people that aren't actually doing anything wrong, they won't be getting censored anymore. He said that's actually a much bigger difference maker than this fact-checking thing. The fact-checking thing is great because it's been fucking nonsense, third-party bullshit. But, you and I have only had a few videos fact-checked, like maybe 3 to 5. We don't really it doesn't happen very often. But he goes, most people that lose their accounts and get upset, it is actually because of this dialing that they do. So they're going to make sure that they're very confident that people they're pulling off are actually, call it the bad guy in this case, just to simplify. Now, I just wanted to give that context because when I understood that, I thought that was important. But back to Zuckerberg, look, it's a business and he wants to make money. He makes excuses like, well, they didn't give us a choice and I had to toe the line and Biden came in and they yelled at us on the phone. And yeah, bro, I get it. You're not an alpha character. You're not going to tell these guys to fuck off. You're not. However, saying that, I can say that like a big tough guy sitting in my chair over here. But the reality is, I don't know if the ramifications for him at the time were significant. Like, oh no, we're going to throw you in jail. So we sit here saying, well, you should have had a backbone like Elon Musk. Elon's in a different position. He really is. And Twitter was in a different position as well. So I'm saying this under the pretense that the ramifications for Zuckerberg would have been like a slap on the wrist or a fine. Well, then you should have stood up to them. But we don't know that it wasn't, we'll shut your company down and put you in a box. We don't actually know. We don't actually know how crazy it was for him. So don't love what he's done in the past. Appreciate how he's kind of shifting. But to just sort of wrap up and answer your question in short, I think it's both. I think he did have a conscience towards doing the right thing, but I don't think he had the will, over the last 8 years.
Well, to build on something you said there that I think is highly important, pointing out the fact that over recent years, he has got into training and jiu-jitsu and just putting on weight and size, becoming overall healthier, stronger. Your physical capabilities greatly impact your mental, not just in terms of, I feel better, I've got more energy today, but also, think about it this way. If you're a scrawny dude that's 130 pounds, you don't have a choice but to be a pacifist.
Essentially, yes. Unless you're good with a gun.
It's a matter of survival for you.
Yes.
So you can't even be virtuous in that scenario and say, because, I think peace is a good thing and nonviolence. It's like, you have to believe
you don't
that.
have a choice, bruv.
Yeah, you have to believe that. And so it's only a virtue if you have the strength and capabilities to do damage.
It's a Jordan Peterson idea. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But actually, it even goes all the way back to Aristotle.
Oh yeah. No. I don't need to play the philosophy game with you. I'm just saying.
No.
Listeners will be able to reference a recent Jordan Peterson kind of,
But actually, it's just that's actually where I was going. I was gonna bring up Aristotle too, about how he thought that essentially people's entire worldview was created by who they are as a person. And so, that's actually one thing that I think is maybe potentially at play here is, okay, maybe he is just feeling more confident as a individual, and therefore his philosophies are changing along with that. However, what I'd say is if he wants people to take that seriously, he has to do the equivalent of the Twitter files. He has to give people just like open source, hey, this is exactly what happened. I'm going to show the documents. I'm going to show you what all happened behind the scenes. That's the only way to get trust back, because even actually there was a clip in that Rogan episode where he says at one point, he goes, yeah, and then there's all these people who were supporting all these things, going with the lockdowns, shitting on dissenters. And now that the cultural winds have changed, they're sitting there and acting like they're one of the good guys now. And he's like, people just aren't going to trust you. And it almost felt like he was saying that to Zuckerberg. It was in the context of just a general conversation. Right. But it did feel kind of like, or at the very least, it could have been pointed to Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
And so that's this idea is like, hey, you don't get to just change your opinion when all of a sudden there's no cost and then be like, hey guys, look, I'm where I need to be now. No, you have to show us something to be able to regain that trust.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I agree with you. I think what's challenging about that, if you think about it, is where do you draw the line? Is it just America? Is it America and Canada? Is it the West?
What do you mean?
Well, you're saying expose or release, say, the Meta files. Mm-hmm. So really what you're talking about is who communicated with Meta to suppress things. It's happening all over the world. So where do you just let it all out? Do you go America, Canada, all of the West? Do you just say, here's all the government chatter we got. Here's all the things we were told we had to do. Do you just do all that?
I think the main thing would be COVID. Not necessarily geographical, but just say, hey, here's all the COVID information we censored.
Sure. That could be enough to end up in a box.
Right. But that goes to that point is you've got to show, if you want people to believe that you genuinely appreciate these principles, you've got to show them that you're willing to incur some sort of cost on them. Because again, that's the whole thing is he's wanting to sit here and say that we're getting back to free speech. And I've always actually been a guy that's very big on free speech. Well, if you're not willing to be for free speech when it counts, when it matters, when there's actually a cost for doing so, then it doesn't matter. Like going out and saying that popcorn tastes good isn't a great use of your free speech, because like what's the consequences of that? Free speech is so that you can speak truth to power.
But let's think here for a second. In terms of functionality, if he's going to open it up and allow people to have more free speech, this is beneficial for the world. Yes. So all he would be doing your thing for is to appease people like you that he's seeking their approval, because it may come at the cost of his own life. So if you think about the actual cost benefit for him there, it's almost zero. It's almost zero, because you're still going to benefit from the change of programming. So for him to go out there and throw himself under the bus and potentially, like I say, end up in a box, there's no benefit for him other than guys like you will be like, hey man, cool, great. I'm going to get shot though. The cost benefit's not there. Cost benefit's not there. Doesn't make sense.
There's a massive benefit to being a principled person.
I'm saying, but the thing is he's already done this. He's already shown that he wasn't willing to put himself on the line and step up and do that.
But that's where I'm saying that's the whole point, is that he's trying to rebrand himself as this guy that like, oh, look at me, I was the victim in that scenario.
I think you're overblowing the value of principles. The thing when it comes to life and death, I think people are going to go, hey, I'm doing the right thing, but I'm not going to come in here and then put all this information out just so that I can be a principled, person in this case and have your approval. It's like the born again Christian. As long as you confess your sins, I'm out. I think that's good enough for this guy. I think that's where he's going to land, because you're basically saying, well, if you don't basically throw your life on the line, then you don't have principles.
Okay, that's That's a very big gap, first of all.
I don't think so.
understand. I understood the issue I'm saying here is, okay, if your point is that, okay, well, if he exposes anything, he's dead. Well, Elon's
Potentially.
already proven that wrong.
He had multiple attempts on his life over the last year and has huge security teams.
Sure, Zuckerberg's is no different.
Sure. But I'm just saying, why welcome more of it? Why be like, yeah, come on, bring more? Why?
Well, hey, and I don't care if he just wants to sit there. I really don't care what Zuckerberg does. Like if he doesn't want to be like principled, then I don't give a fuck. But what I'm saying is he's the one making this push. He's the one making this push, being like, I'm for free speech. I'm this principled guy. These are values that I appreciate.
I don't disagree with you.
Then you have to be able to.
I don't disagree with you. All I'm like, maybe he should stop trying to be principled and be like, hey, I'm going to do the right thing. Repent. Cool. Just do the right thing. But at the end of the day, I think that's where it stops. I just think that's what you're going to get. He's going to keep running his company. He's not going to expose himself like that. I don't think it takes away from the value of the move, essentially. But yeah, the guy, here's the thing. If you already murder someone, you don't get to be top of the food chain in terms of Mother Teresa. You don't get there anymore. You already killed somebody. So same thing for him. You don't get to be a highly principled man because you've already done all these things anyway. So I don't think he belongs at the top of the food chain on this no matter what, right? So I just don't think he does. And I see your perspective. I just think principles have a line when it comes to things like this because he really would be putting himself in more danger. So it's this weird thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't disagree with you, but he already put himself in that situation by not being principled. You know what I mean?
No, and again, I don't really care what Zuckerberg does. If he just moves on and tries to sweep this under the rug, then I don't care. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But what I'm saying is that if he's going to try to push this rebrand, no matter how much he tries to push it, it's not going to work unless he gives people something real.
Right. I understand what you're saying. I think we're kind of arguing maybe different points. I agree with you. I think that he's going to stop at that point. I think he's going to do the best he can to rebrand himself until a push comes to shove, and then that's the end of it.
I agree.
Because I don't think he's gonna push past that line.
All right. Anything else you wanted to add today?
That is everything. Left off with a little spice today.
Again, don't forget to head over to our Substack where you can sign up for our newsletter, which goes out 5 days a week. It's completely free, and you can find the link in the description below. All right. We'll catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.